Professor Musa Xulu is a cultural expert and Heritage Development Trust Executive Director, and he joins us now for this particular conversation. Professor, it's great to have you with us. Happy Africa Day to you, Xabashe. So firstly, talk to us about the significance or relevance of this day, especially in today's global positioning of our continent.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Africa Day, the 25th of May, as you have rightly said, is a day that came as a result of observing the 25th of May 1963 with the formation of the Organization of African Unity. Then, of course, in 2002, that was changed here in Durban to become the African Union. How it came about was that from the 1400s, Africa started getting into a period of very long colonization until, of course, 1957, when the first African country was liberated, which is Ghana. There were only two countries that were not colonized, which is Ethiopia and Liberia. Others were colonized for longer periods, others for shorter periods. The northern parts of Africa has been colonized to date. They've become Arabic. So they look at themselves sometimes as being more from the Middle East than from Africa. But most of the colonization that we talk about is the one that took place in what is known as sub-Saharan Africa, which was through France on the main, England on the main, and of course other countries like, to some extent, Portugal, Spain, and a few others. Colonization simply meant that the order that was there in Africa was replaced, and for over 300, 400 years, that order was the one that was in charge. It's not European order. It's a mix of oppression and deprivation and making sure that people get to lose their sense of history and identity and heritage. And then, of course, by the time we became liberated from 1957, we had forgotten most of the things that our forebears, our ancestors and forefathers had been looking at as the heritage and the pride of Africa, and the riches and the artworks and so on. If you go to Europe today, you go to those museums, a lot of artworks that were pre-colonial were taken away, and we find them in Belgium, in England, in Germany, and everywhere, which had a lot of meaning for our lives. So where we are now, in 2025, we are celebrating the African unity that came as a result of the fall of colonization. But you know that because most of colonization was also mental, it has not been easy for it to go away. And we keep now, many universities are busy with programs called decolonization. And the decolonization of the curriculum, what we learn, what we read, and so on, is a huge problem. But also the fact that economically Africa is the poorest continent, whereas it's a continent that is the richest when it comes to minerals of all sides, of all types, and even as the new minerals now that are coming in, Africa has those minerals, but they get taken away to Europe and America and China, and Africa remains poor. Unemployment is high. And of course, inequality is the continent that has it all.
Look, Professor, I love that you brought that context of colonialism. I want us to expand on that and bring it closer to home because of the recent uproar in the United States about the song Kill the Boer. I mean, we in a country know this is not a direct call to kill anyone, let alone a white Afrikaner or a farmer. But when the historical context of our struggle has to be defended and basically forced on a people to abandon or pretend like certain events never actually existed, unfortunate as they are, simply cannot be erased. You spoke earlier on about the fact that we were being forced to losing our identity as well as heritage. So I'm sure you heard the preceding clip before our interview there, where Thabo Mbeki has now been asked once again what are his sentiments on that issue or that song of course, Kill the Farmer, Kill the Boer.
Well, Alicia, the way in which music is defined, and also, music is sound, which sound has a context and then has content. Content is the lyrics. and then of course it gives you meaning. Those four things, if you jump them, you will not be able to explain a song. Now this song, Kill the Poor, Kill the Farmer, has got a song and a chant. It's all put together. It's got a context. It's a liberation chant, a liberation song. It had an era in which it was legitimate to sing it. But after 1994, that song could not, have a context to be performed. I think President Mbeki should have firstly explained that this is a historical song, which at some stage was relevant to sing. But after we became a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa, the song itself has no place except in the archives and in the museums. And that is what we should be encouraging in the country. That the liberation struggle should not be denied suddenly and explained away. It was a very important era for our country. But those aspects of liberation that fitted before 1994 should be given to scholars and academics and universities and be placed in archives and maybe even in the school curriculum so that we don't forget. But we don't then start saying, no, it's just a chant, it's meaningless, it does not mean anything. It did have meaning, and that meaning was that all the liberation struggle songs were about mobilization at that time. The context has changed now. We are a new South Africa, and therefore that is, I think, is the way to explain it. In terms of why some are still singing it. Some are still singing it because people sometimes feel that because they were absent during the liberation struggle, they can only survive if they go back to the things that have already been abandoned, because we have a constitution now and we have defined the republic as a non-sexist, non-racial democratic republic.
I hear your point.
If they sing this song now, it's out of context. It may mean a lot of other things. They should be encouraged not to sing it.
I hear your point, Professor, and the song is not illegal to sing anyway. But let's talk about this. How far are we then as a continent in forging unity as well as standing and speaking as one voice in ensuring that we open as well as commit ourselves fully to take back control of our continent and formulate our own future as a self-sustaining continent? We've seen how countries like Burkina Faso have been heavily criticized for going this route.
Well, the African Union is the body that is recognized globally as the body that unites Africa. It's got 5 regions. It's got 5 regions, but in 2003 it got a 6th region, which is the African diaspora. All those countries where people left here as slaves and are now having their own countries, especially in the Americas, are now part of the African Union. The African Union is against the coup d'etats, taking power by force. So it endorses democratic engagement. I know that in West Africa, the problem is that there's a suspicion that unlike the British colonies, the former British colonies, the French did not really leave the countries that they were colonizing, and there's a suspicion that they are still there influencing things and even influencing who gets elected and who does not get elected. But I think West Africa is still facing a lot of challenge in terms of embracing democracy. I know Burkina Faso, for example, there's that young colonel now who is in charge, but there's a criticism that he got power by force, which is against the African Union. That needs to be fixed at some stage. That is the one aspect that compromises the call for unity in Africa. There should be one kind of vision for the continent. At the moment, each country has got its own vision, but once there is one vision for the entire continent, and then we'll be able to liberate ourselves in the second and last phase.
Professor, let me just read something for you here in the historical context of colonialism and in the colonial era. Colonial powers often cultivated a local elite educated in the West who later led independent movements, and these leaders sometimes developed arrangements with former colonial powers even right after independence. So quite a lot to take into account when dealing with these matters. Professor, as always, it's great to engage you on such Such Matters. We're going to leave it there. Once again, happy Africa Day. That is a cultural expert as well as Heritage Development Trust Executive Director, Professor Musa Xulu there.